Hello guys and welcome to the Grandmaster fight 6.4.6. We're finally at the pinnacle of what I've been working for, but you guys have been probably also working for and are watching this video for a bit of support. We're finally here. This is the big one. Before we go in, I would recommend going in with at least 1,500 units, as you don't want to make the same mistake as me. Going in and then getting stuck on the Grandmaster fight when he's got about 16% health and then having to grind arena for 2 days. Go in with that about 1,500 to 2,000 units just as a buffer, just in case you do go wrong, as I know I actually spent a lot of my units in the first phase as I was not used to the fight. Once you get used to it, it gets a lot easier. So, easiest path. In my opinion, the easiest path is this Cosmic path if you've got a lot of Mystic champs. I took in Purgatory because she did a lot of work for me, collected those Cosmic souls and sort of did a lot of damage, so I bought her. And then obviously I had Rintra, who helped a lot for the Vision Arcus, which is a key fight, and the Annihilus, which is also a really key fight. All of the Cosmic champs on this path, the path nodes are Tenacity 3, so they shake off basically every buff, so they don't, you can't stun them. They're stun immune pretty much, unless you take in a passive stun with a guidance, so like a Magneto White or an Apocalypse or a Storm X. However, they also have buff duration, so their buffs last a longer amount of time, and they all have a Fury. So this fight is, or I'd say this path is the easiest in my opinion anyway, because the champions on it are also relatively easy. You've got a tricky one in Vision Arcus and you've got Annihilus, but apart from that, Phoenix, an old, relatively easy champ. Groot, the same. Heimdall, as long as you don't push him to that SP2, he's easy. What I would say with each fight is, the first fight, Phoenix, don't try and get her to that SP2. It's easy to dex, nothing happens. If you put her to that SP1, she gets some Phoenix charges and also gains a lot of power, so you can accidentally push her to the SP3. With Heimdall, only let him get to his SP1, let him throw it, go back. These are long fights, but obviously this is to get you to Thronebreaker, so they're going to be tricky. Groot, SP1 or SP2 if you're good at evading the SP2. And then Annihilus, probably an SP1 is easier to evade. SP2 does a bit more damage into the block, but I obviously took in Rintra, who really, really benefited me. He basically stopped Annihilus from being unstoppable. Hela, an easy one, either, doesn't matter. And then Vision Arcus, let him get to SP1 or SP2, as long just you've got to think about that power that he's gaining. And then Carnage, Captain Marvel, we just had a Captain Marvel fight. You'll be practiced in it in 6.4.4, so it's relatively easy. And then you've got Angela, who is also a key fight, but we'll get onto her when we get there. And then the easiest Sentinel. So, as I said, a neutralized champ, a Tigra, works really, really well for this. Is a great counter sort of for this path. Rintra works really nicely. Doctor Doom, Symbiote Supreme, Longshot. The list goes on and on. Any Mystic champ you want, because when going in, you don't need a specific champ to beat the Grandmaster. You do need a champ who, or I would highly recommend you taking a champ, a Professor X, a Mr. Sinister, somebody who doesn't get inverted controls, because the last phase is basically, I would have saved 600 units if I'd taken in my Professor X, but I didn't do it, and then I didn't character swap him, and then I was basically stuck in there for that final phase, because it doesn't matter how much damage they do, it's all done on skill, so he'll become wounded. We'll obviously explain this further, but he'll become wounded, and then you'll be able to do basically 600% more damage. And it doesn't matter who you bring in. It's neither here nor there, really. So, as you can see, we've taken down that Annihilus just then. He was relatively easy. We're on to this Hela. Again, is somebody who needs not much, or need some attention, because they're all, you don't want to take much damage before the Grandmaster, but you don't need to sit there and bring in certain counters, etc., etc. She will be indestructible at the end of the fight. You've got to watch out for that, but apart from that, she is not too tricky and should allow you to sort of get through her quite quick. So that fight's done. We're on to the Vision Arcus one. Power gain, stop that power gain if you can. Rintrah obviously works really nicely. So does Doctor Doom because he has that strong power control. Basically, any Mystic champ who will stop that or who can take him out really fast. The Tiger obviously works as well. We've been sort of through the counters for him. I do get hit a couple times on his SP1 because I just not very, I've used him an absolute ton. He was probably my most used 5-star. However, as of recent, I've not really fought him often. He's quite a tricky guy to fight with the power gain and the SP2 and then the SP3. So, yeah, he is, as long as you've got a power control champ, it does make this fight a whole lot easier. It also saves you from worrying. But obviously, it's just a step towards the Grandmaster. You want to try and take as little damage as possible. But if you do, don't worry. You've bought in those revives. Try and stack up on your revives as well. But you've bought in those units to buy revives. So I would not panic it too much. The Carnage is probably the easiest fight on this, in my opinion. Nothing difficult about him. He is an easy one. If you're bringing in Corvus, get a Corvus charge. If you're bringing in Morningstar, because I know she's really effective with the boss or with the Grandmaster. She's perfect to get a little charge on. I just used I-Bomb because I was hoping I'd finish it on 100% health, so it was basically as if I'd bought nothing in. Take him to his SP3, get the acid burn. They can't shrug off acid burn, so it makes the fight a whole lot easier. So that Carnage fight's done. A pretty quick, a pretty easy one. Moving on to the Captain Marvel movie. Like I said, we've seen her already. Seen her in 6.4.4. We've got our practice in. Same with that video. Yeah, she is basically stun immune with her tenacity, but don't let her get to that SP2. Otherwise, as you'll see, the mistake that I make here, she'll hit you with the unblockable. She'll do too much damage and you'll die. So SP1 all the way. Try not to hit her block if you can, but don't worry about it. It's not overly major. Block that SP1 beam. It's not very strong. And you should be golden for this fight. Now that that one's over, we're now on to the Angela. As I said, a pretty key fight. She does regenerate, but keep her to the SP1, and it's relatively easy to take her down. Just dex back, hit her in her as much as you can, and you should be all good. I would say that her SP2 is relatively easy to dex as well, but if you're not absolutely keen to do that, then don't worry and just take her SP1. Obviously, Rintra was, again, I took him on. A Tigra would have worked. I should have brought them both on, but I chose not to. As I said, we're coming up to that character select, so if you can, bring in your Mr. Sinisters, your Professor X's, as a lot of the fight is not based on how much damage you can do, but just if you can do the challenges that he sets. So after this fight, we'll start getting into sort of the key aspects of him and, try and get you that throne breaker. So we'll see you in the next one. Right, that Sentinel's done. Easy fight. Just somebody to get a charge up, but we're into the Grandmaster. So, how do you play him? He basically has 4 phases. Phase 1 is opening Gambit. So, you've got green. You'll have a green little token below your name. Hopefully I get one here to show you there. So that's competence. You need as many as you can. For this first phase, I would recommend getting about 20. If you get a blunder, it's by doing the challenge wrong. So how this first phase will work, and you'll understand it the more you get into the fight. It's one of those things that, I watched a ton of videos, but until I actually got in there and realised what it was made a whole lot harder. So basically, he bans 3 separate things: dexterity, light attacks, and a parry. To ban these, do them twice. So if you hit him with a light attack, he'll ban it. Once it's banned, if you do that light attack again, you'll get a blunder. 5 blunders mean he gets an SP3. That SP3 will kill you. So you've got to try and keep your blunders as low as possible. If you dex twice, which it can't be avoided sometimes. Sometimes you'll accidentally do it. But once you dex once, if it will come up there like dexterity banned. Once it's banned, you cannot dex again. Otherwise, you'll get a blunder. So you have to make sure that you're staying really careful. Maybe just try and hit him once. As I said, it's not about, you're not going to take 9 million of his health down unless he's wounded. So you have to be careful with that. And then the final one is light attacks. Parry him, hit into his light attacks, or hit him with light attacks until it comes up. If you accidentally do one more, don't panic unless you've got 4 blunders. Just do it until you can. Once all of these are banned, it will say tactics unbanned, and he will go wounded. He'll have an SP1, sorry. At this SP1, you see the 4 in the top corner. You'll have the green one, which is dex that SP1 puzzle. The blue one, which is hold block, and the red one, which is let it hit you. Don't worry, you won't take any damage from letting it hit you. But once that is done and the SP1 ends, he will become wounded, and then you can hit into him as much as you can while he's wounded to do as much damage and take him down. Obviously, you want to have as many competence charges as you can. How do you get those? Well, in the first phase, you get them from intercepting. So every time you intercept, you get a competence phase, and every time you complete his puzzle, you get a competence phase, or every time you do the correct one. So you get 3 for if you block when it says block, evade or dex when it says dex, and let it hit you when it says let it hit you, and you get one. You want to try and go in with about 20. Once you get used to it, you, like I said, you'll completely understand what I mean. Going back, I wish I would have obviously been able to play this so much better, but unfortunately I didn't. So never mind, you'll get used to it. If you have to go in once and not use any of your units to understand it and then come back out and do it again, I would recommend that if you're happy to do that. I sort of went for the let me just do it all in one go. And how did that work for me? Probably not great, but we can get onto that in the end of the video. So that is phase 1. Once it says tactics unbanned, go in, smash him as much as you can. 5 blunders, as you can see here, gives him the SP3. He kills you, and then that's that. You're out, and then you'll have to revive. Good, as I said, there aren't really any counters to the Grandmaster. There's no one you can bring in who is going to make your life so much easier. That's just, as you can see, the fight's not based on skill or on who you not based on who you've got. It's based on skill completely. Competence, you get a competence for every intercept. Obviously intercepting's quite hard. If you can't do that, then just wait until you've banned all of the or he's banned all of them. Once they've got unbanned, do the damage, and then don't worry, go back in, do it again, and you'll have to keep doing this to get him down, to get used to it. As you can see, I started with 1100 revives. I actually got him down to 16% and then was stuck. I had no revives left as all my champs were knocked out. I had to go and grind arena for 2 days, as I said, but there we go. So is the way of life. As you can see, I've got him down. I managed to do it in the end. He went wounded. I did put as much damage as I could in. Unfortunately, I didn't show you guys that because it failed, as is a common theme on this channel recently, and I understand it's pretty poor, but I'm really trying my best to stop it from happening. Phase 2 is where it gets a little bit trickier, but also can be made that little bit easier. So, in my opinion, this was, looking back, the first one was a little bit harder than this one. This one, you'll see a challenge set to you on the right of the screen. There, you saw it in purple. It was to land a critical hit. You go in, you hit him. You have a certain amount of time to do this. And once you hit him, you get a competence. And then for every one he sets you, you get a competence. Obviously, to get him to that SP3, get some competence up by taking doing the puzzle correctly. As you can see, perform an intercept. So now I've got to perform an intercept. Do 5 of those, and then he goes wounded. Hopefully, I will have that on recording to show you guys. And then you put as much damage as you can, and then right before the wounded ends, hit him with your SP1 that you will have there saved up. There are no SP3s in this, so you can only get your SP1. Unfortunately, as you see here, I make a bit of a mistake, don't manage to get very much. I've done 1 challenge, so it's not the end of the world if I die. But some of the challenges are easier than others. So whiff an attack is you dash back. These are the 5 challenges: whiff an attack, dash back, and then just do a light attack in the air. Basically, miss an attack. Obviously, you have to be careful he doesn't hit you. Land a critical hit, easy, just hit into your opponent. You'll eventually land a crit. Perform an intercept, a bit more tricky. Go back in, go into him, perform an intercept, and then gain a buff. So that can be a dexterity buff, so just dex him and get that, and then hit him, and it will challenge complete. And then you've also got inflicted damage effects. So somebody like Rincher was perfect for this, made it a lot easier. However, that's the way you go. Once you've got your competences up, go in and hit him while he's wounded. Do as much damage, and then you'll eventually take him down to his phase 3, which is where you need your controls. As soon as you hit this phase, he goes infuriated, and then you have to just, for 3 or 4 seconds, you have to just basically dash back and make sure that he doesn't hit you, because he's unblockable and unstoppable. In this phase, every 8 seconds, he assigns you a challenge that gives you a competence, and you have to complete it. After you've completed 5 of these challenges, he gets wounded. So on the previous one, it was after 7. In this one, it was after 5. After 5, he gets wounded, and and then is where you do your damage. So you've got to set up your competences by baiting that SP1. His power bar works like Doctor Strange, where it just slowly goes up. Get him to his SP1, hit that, or do the puzzle. get your competences up, the more damage you can do. So, what are the challenges that he sets? Strike into the block. You have to strike his block 4 times. Luckily, he goes quite defensive and holds his block up, but sometimes he will be a bit of a pain and he won't hold it, and then you lose that challenge. Obviously, you've got 5 challenges to lose, basically, as long as you don't go wrong on that SP1, so don't worry about that. If you have to get one wrong, you have to get one wrong. For example, Kitty Pryde can't do a damage in effect unless on her SP1, so sometimes I just had to get that one wrong. You've got perform a backdash, so you dash back 4 times, 4 or 5 times, and then it will say complete. Just make sure he doesn't clip you on while you're dashing back, especially if you're against the wall. He's got stand still, so you just stand still and hold block. You'll see below his name, it will go red, and you'll see there's a little timer going round. You just complete that. You only have to stand still for not very long, but you can still dex and then go back to standing still. Your time does not refresh. He's also got their knock me down, which is a very difficult one because he's stun immune. So you just use your SP1, or that's the way I went, use your SP1 to knock him down, unless you're really good at intercepting with heavy attacks, but I'm not a skilled enough player to do that. And then he's got perform 3 well-timed blocks, so they're just parries. Unfortunately, as you'll see here, I just continue to come out and back in again. As my revives were so low, I had no other choice. The tricky part with this phase is it sounds like every other. However, every 25 seconds, he gets an inverted control, and this makes this phase so annoying. I reckon if I bought in Professor X, like I said earlier, I'd have saved 600, 700 units, or maybe 400 or 500, but I would have saved so many, because the challenge is once you go in so many times, 15, 20 times, that's what 300 units. Once you go in, you understand how this phase works, but doing the 5 challenges before you get inverted controls is so tricky that I only managed to do it maybe once or twice. And that is why I wish I'd bought in an inverted controls. A Mrs. Sinister works, Kitty Pryde works with Emma Frost. I just didn't take anyone in, and this does allow you to do this phase a lot easier. And I would say that unless you're really good at playing with invert controls and you're able to, if you get like a dash back or a well-timed block, if you're in your brain, you're able to change quickly and do, then I would say don't worry. But I thought I was good at invert controls, but I wasn't good enough to take him out, and that really annoyed me, and I really wish I had taken somebody in, but here we are. I didn't, so never mind, but I would highly recommend to you guys that you bring in somebody. As you can see, when he's wounded, it doesn't matter who you've got, you still do a mass amount of damage, and those competence points are basically the main way of damaging him. So as long it doesn't matter if you bring in an Ant or Ant-Man, either way they're going to do the same amount of damage depending on how many competences you have. So I would highly recommend getting those invert controls in, because otherwise you will get a blunder or you will get hit and you will die. So yeah, bring one of those guys in. This phase, as I said, gets easier the more you do it. You've got the strike my block, perform well-timed blocks, which are just parries, knock me down. You've got to knock him down with your SP1, but complete these puzzles as much as you can, and they'll give you the competence to kill him when he becomes wounded. As you'll see, I probably go in maybe in this phase. This phase was where I wasted the most revives, and that was all because I didn't have an inverted champ. As you'll see here, I will go to invert controls. I fail, and then I manage to stay alive for 1 second. And then in a minute, he'll give me a new challenge. I'm on 4 challenges. He gets wounded. I can take him out. Thank God. I get really lucky here. However, he does not go down to that 1%. So I've got to do it all again, which is an absolute pain. And I die and I have to go in. However, luckily for me, I get lucky. I do it again. But yeah, just to reiterate the phases, you've got phase 1 where you, once they get banned, go back in. The dexterity gets banned, dex twice, it gets banned. Do the light attacks, they get banned, and then a parry. Get those banned, then he'll become wounded and you can hit him. And then for Phase 2, you've obviously got, that's the longest phase where he gives you challenges and you have to do those to gain up your competence points. That is one of the I'd say it's the biggest one, so it does take the longest, but it's probably one of the easiest ones. And then you've got this one, which with inverted controls is going to be made a little bit easier. If you can do his challenges in time, as you'll see, I finally get it here on my last units, this was, and then I finish the puzzle. I take him down to 1%, but what you have to remember is every time he finishes a phase, he goes unstoppable and unblockable. So if you hit him, you will die, and that's exactly what happens to me. No, sorry for the spoilers, but there we go. And then, yeah, phase 3, bring in those inverted controls. And then phase 1 is the easiest phase. It's basically a free hit. It's the perfect way to end him. You'll see in a minute, and it's easier to explain then, but basically he'll go indestructible or he'll go infuriated, as he has with the rest of the challenges. Once he does that, you have to stay away from him. It's about 20 seconds long, or it's only 9 because we did a short path. However, as you can see here, I kept hitting into him, wondering why he wasn't going down. There, he hit me, and that was my last bit of unit. However, I'm on phase 1. I'm on the last phase, phase 4. And in this phase, as I was saying, all you've got to do is just dash back, don't get hit. And if you can do that, it grants you an SP3. That SP3 guaranteed kills him. So all you